Alrighty. Hello everyone. Welcome back to another Gathering Folds live stream. Today I'm talking about triangle twists, both closed and open. And what I've got for grids today is two 8-fold triangle grids on hexagons. Don't worry if you don't have hexagons, this will work equally well on squares. I'm just using hexagons to demonstrate some symmetries here. And then I have a 24-fold triangle grid on a square. And you'll see why I'm using a square later once we start putting the tessellation onto the paper. The square is actually going to be the optimal shape to put this tessellation on. And I also have a stack of example tessellations to show you once we get our two twists going. So first thing I'm going to do is find my bone folder, always important. And then I'm going to grab one of these 8-fold grids. And we'll start with the closed triangle twist. For the closed triangle twist, we want to find this center point and put 3 grid lines as mountains on the paper. So I'm drawing these with my pen, red for mountain, dashed blue for valley, and I'm going to choose to make this a right-handed twist, so my mountain will fold over my valley in a right-handed direction. That means my valleys are going out here, all rotationally symmetric. And then I can bring my mountains up as mountains. So I've got all 3 mountains coming to a single point. With them all brought up, you can see these valleys lock the bottom in place. And then I put it down on my desk to push just outside of where the valley hits the next mountain. And then once it's puffy, squash from the top. And so we have a closed triangle twist. And you can see here it is 3-fold rotationally symmetric. I can put any of these 3 pleats in the same position, and I can't tell which one is which. And that's why I used a hexagon piece of paper for this demo instead of a square. But the closed triangle twist, just like the closed square twist, is coming all mountain folds to a central point, and that closed point is what we see again on the backside. And I just want to take a moment to note, when you're moving your finger around the twist, whether from the back side or the front side, you move in the same direction to move smoothly without hang-ups. So what looks right-handed from the back is also right-handed from the front. And this is very important so you can recognize what your paper is trying to tell you when you're folding bigger tessellations. So to complete the crease pattern here, like the rest of the twists, what you use to set up is not necessarily, or is not at all, the final crease pattern. Instead, we're using the projection of the mountain folds into the center, the extension of the mountain folds, which will eventually be flat. But you'll notice that I did not pre-crease these 3 lines before I folded my twist. I simply let those mountain folds extend into the middle and then squash and create my new lines from there. So that's the closed triangle twist. Let's turn to the open triangle twist. With the open triangle twist, like the open square twist, I'm going to have one grid shape, in this case a triangle, that is outlined in the center. And so you can see these mountain folds and valleys coming together when I've outlined one grid triangle. And now I'll draw exactly what I'm doing onto the paper so you can see as well. So I'm outlining this grid triangle, and this time I'm outlining left-handedly. So my valley needs to be further out from the mountain, or further out from the outlined shape than the mountain. So my valley needs to be out here, and out here. Now I can go ahead and say, because I know that the corners of the inner polygon come to where the valley of one pleat meets the mountain of the next, I can go ahead and tell you that the mountain folds in the end will outline this large triangle, but we're not going to use those three folds in the beginning to set up the twist. So bringing back our setup, we've got our three mountain folds surrounding a single grid triangle, each on a different side of the grid triangle. And then with our valleys in place, we can go ahead and start pushing just outside of where the valleys hit the mountains, those corners, and then push from the top once our twist is somewhat puffy on top. So now this one, I did it on a hexagon, but you can see that I can tell the difference between the three pleats because it's not in the middle of the hexagon. If, however, I was using a triangle-centered grid, which I have a video for that, triangle-centered grids on hexagons, then I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the three edges of my open triangle twist. Now, likewise, we've got these lines here in the middle that didn't end up in the final crease pattern, but it is important to be able to use the extension of the mountain fold to locate your twist instead of pre-creasing first and collapsing later. And then the shape that we outlined here is a single grid triangle, and the shape on the back, likewise, a single grid triangle. So that's the closed and the open equilateral triangle twist. Now you might wonder, why am I saying equilateral triangle when the title of the video just says triangle? And that's because I know that coming up in a few weeks I'll be doing right triangle twists with you. And keeping these distinct is important because they use different grids, and there's a couple different distinctions between the two. The equilateral triangle twist can be made into entire tessellations on its own. And in fact, it's a good time to go to examples. So we can have the closed triangle twist in a tessellation all by itself. We can either think of this as rotationally around a particular twist or as mirror symmetry. So I have mirror symmetry lines at every twist boundary in here. And this is still just threefold rotationally symmetric, even though it looks sixfold. But take a look at the edges here. I've got three edges with wide gaps and three edges with these V's. This is telling me that even though I started with 6-fold rotationally symmetric paper, a hexagon, I'm ending up with something 3-fold rotationally symmetric because I'm using triangles and they don't have any 6-fold rotational symmetry in them. Likewise, we can also make a tessellation out of purely open triangle twists. And I should clarify, these aren't the only tessellations that can be made with purely closed or purely open triangle twists, but they are the only ones with a single triangle twist all on one side. We can then combine the two. We can have closed and open. Now here we have rotational symmetry but no mirror symmetry, whereas the last two we had both rotational and mirror symmetry. And we can take this tessellation and put every other twist on the back side. So we end up with all closed on the front and all open on the back. We can even take this tessellation and add space around a cluster of 6 twists, like we have right here. So I've got a cluster of 6, and then I added extra space to get to my next clusters. Spacing in these equilateral triangle tiling tessellations is really flexible, and so we can have a lot of different options. One interesting thing here is that the 3-fold rotational symmetry, which I'll go into more in another video, is not actually in the twists themselves. There's 3-fold rotational symmetry in this loop of 6, in this one, and in this one. And those are 3 distinct loops based on the various characteristics of the tessellation. So we can have closed and open triangle twists in yet another arrangement. And you guessed it, there's more arrangements still. So this tessellation has clusters of 4 twists. So I call this cluster 4 open centers. It has mirror symmetries across the tessellation, and the mirror symmetries contain these clusters of 4 twists. And we can take these clusters and put them on alternating sides of the tessellation, just like we could for a single twist itself. And this is something that you can do with triangles that you cannot do with squares, which is take a cluster of 4 and then repeat it again on the other side right next to the original cluster. And triangle twists are useful in more than just tessellations with only triangles. So while we're in the somewhat simpler arena, I want to show you we have all these triangle twists around what looks like just a hexagon hole, but is really an open hexagon twist. So if you want to learn the open hexagon twist, join me next week, where we'll do both the closed and open hexagon. And I'll figure out between now and then which tessellation we're doing to practice. So triangle twists are useful everywhere, not just in tessellations that use only triangles. And sometimes a tessellation that uses only triangles can make it look like there are other things that are triangle twists, but actually are not quite. So in this tessellation, we've got the closed, we've got the open, and we've got this thing that is a residual based on how these 3 open twists are connected. So continuing another tessellation with clusters of 4, we've got clusters of 4 that are not all on the same side, where the central twist is on the opposite side from the corner twists. And this one confused me too. When I started doing it, I thought that these were actually like clusters of 6 with one spare, but it's actually the same as the clusters of 4, which I will talk about more in a future video about extended triangle symmetries. Then we have tessellation of the week, groovy triangles. This is not what we'll be folding today, but it is something that you can work up to by practicing your closed and open triangle twists. This one does use both left and right-handed, open and closed, so left and right of each triangle twists, because it's got the same things again on the back side. Continuing on, you can have multiple different triangle twists in the same tessellation, even if it has hexagons involved. So the previous tessellation we saw with hexagons just had one kind of triangle. It also just had one kind of hexagon. But it turns out that you can do multiple of each, and the triangle is a really useful tool in a lot of triangle grid tessellations. There's very few triangle grid tessellations that do not use a triangle twist somewhere. You can go advanced and funky with triangle twists, and you can overlap twists in various ways. Again, here I've got both the open and the closed triangle twist in the same tessellation involving hexagons. And yeah, basically triangle twists are a fundamental skill that it pays to be able to do, both to set up from the front and the back of the paper. And with that introduction, let's get to it. Let's fold some more triangle twists. So I've got my 24-fold square grid, and the first thing I'm going to do is find the center of my paper. So if I can't spot it by eye, I can fold the paper in half and then in half again in the other direction. And here I'm not creasing hard, I'm just lining up the center so I can identify my central point. And with that central point identified, what I want us to do today is to come one spacing to the right to set up a closed triangle twist. Now, this one I'm going to make into a right-handed twist. So when I bring my mountain folds up, and one note on this, when I found the location of my center of the triangle twist, that was along a grid line that's parallel to the edge of the paper. So I've got these edge parallel lines arranged horizontally, and we'll go ahead and get started. So this closed triangle twist is going in one spacing out from the center of the paper, and I'm going to go ahead and squash that twist. And then on the pleat down below, I'm going to put an open triangle twist. Now, I did that rather quickly. Let me go through more slowly. So when I'm looking at my paper, the first thing I want to know when I'm putting in my next twist is how close is it to the previous twist. In this case, I want the corners to touch, so my valley of the next twist needs to come right to the corner of the previous twist. If my valley is there, that means my mountain is one further out. And if I've got my new mountain and my existing mountain outlining two sides of this grid triangle, then that's going to tell me that my third mountain for this triangle twist needs to go on the bottom. Now, the thing here is I can't just extend this line over the pleat. I need to open the pleat to match the line. Because if I kept the pleat closed, I would actually end up one grid spacing too high, and I'd end up with a closed triangle twist. So we always want to set our mountain folds from the center of the twist, not from across a pleat from the twist itself. So once I've got this open triangle twist in place, I'll go ahead and squash it. And actually, yeah, that needs to be slightly different. I did a prototype last week and then went looking for it yesterday and had lost it. I thought that what I was doing was exactly the same, but it turns out not quite. So instead of putting the twist all the way close in on this bottom edge, we're going to shift it out one. So sorry about any confusion, but we're going to shift this valley out one, shift the mountain, and this is going to touch here. And you'll see why I'm doing this in just a second. So what I noticed was that the tip of my triangle had passed the line that I wanted to use as a mirror symmetry line. And that's no good. So what I'm going to do from here is continue down, and I'm going to make a column of twists, alternating closed and open. My closed twists are going to have one side that's exactly corner to corner with my open twist. So putting that together slowly, if I want my next closed twist to be corner to corner, I need a valley fold that goes straight into that corner. My mountain fold is one spacing further out, and since this is a closed twist, I use that grid intersection that was identified by the intersection of the new mountain and the existing mountain to find my third mountain fold. Squashing that twist, you can see that I've got an exact alignment between these two closed square twists, which is what I'm going for here today. Then continuing on down, I'm going to leave one spacing between the corner of the closed twist and the corner of the next open twist. Then the mountain, solid line, goes one spacing further. I'm outlining this target grid triangle. And I can go ahead and squash my twist. So then going the other direction, up the column, on this side, the closed triangle and the open triangle do meet at the corner. So this side actually does have the valley fold come straight to the corner. Then a new mountain fold above the valley. This will be an open twist because it's beside a closed twist. And again, we want to set that third mountain direction based on the grid triangle itself. So coming in and squashing. Then I'll continue leaving a space before my closed triangle twist. So if I'm leaving a space, my next valley comes in and hits one space up. Then the mountain, one space above that. And then I can set up all three mountain folds with their respective valleys and squash my twist. Continuing up as before, I'm going to have another open triangle twist up here. And if I was so inclined, I could have a partial closed triangle twist right at the top. So next up, we're going to see the mirroring effect. So I'm going to draw a mirror symmetry line down through the center of our paper, because if you remember, this is our center point right here. And here at the bottom, I am going to squash, so swivel and squash this partial closed triangle because it is going to run into our mirror symmetry line otherwise. So there we have mirror symmetry lines. Now we need to know what to do with them. So whenever we have these kind of stair-step pleats, I want to look for which one is on top and start there first. And this is kind of a long practice, tells you to start with the one on top kind of thing. So then, just like we did when starting our first twist, I'm going to come one space out from the center of our mirror line to position the center of our next closed triangle twist. So up until this point, we'd been doing right-handed closed twists and left-handed open twists. Now we've got our first left-handed closed twist. And once I've put in the twist, I'm going to reconcile the overlaps. So from here, I can actually see that I'm going to have a valley fold exactly where the paper is sitting down in that crease. And I'm going to get two twists off of this, one on either side of this pleat. So what I'm going to do first, and actually I'll do this slowly while talking. The first thing we need to be able to do here is open up this pleat overlap. So when I'm opening up the overlap, I'm going to push it open first on the pleat that came through last, and then second on the pleat that came through first. Now this is puffy and up in the air. So what I'm going to do is shift my paper so that I have mountain folds coming in to points one space out from where the valley hits. So I get a mountain one spacing over from the valley. And there I can fold the valley down. And from here, I know this bottom three-way intersection needs to be a closed twist. So I can simply take this pleat and flip it over, keep the mountain in the same place, but put the valley on the other side, and get a new closed twist. And then this upper intersection, I know has to mirror this open twist. It has to be open. Right now it's set up to be closed. So what I'm going to do here is move the mountain one space down and put the valley on the bottom edge of that. So once more, I've got my flat three-way intersection, and it has two pleats that are going to existing twists. Those two pleats can't move. My third pleat, however, can move. And so I'm going to take the mountain down a grid spacing, put the valley on the bottom side of that, make sure the valleys for my other two mountains are in the right place, aka actually on the grid lines they're supposed to be on, and then I can squash this twist as well. And with that in place, I can continue down to the next pleat overlap, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. My valley that I'm targeting runs from one space out from the corner of the top closed triangle to precisely the corner of the bottom closed triangle. I'm going to open first one pleat and then the other of the pleat overlap. Then I'll set up two three-way intersections so that the mountain that runs between them is one space away from that valley that I marked. Lay those all down flat, then open up the closed twist, and then shift the mountain down, placing the valley on the opposite side to open and squash my open triangle twist. So from here, there's no more pleat overlaps, but I do have two locations where I can put another open triangle twist before this column is complete. So one spacing out from this closed triangle here, and I can set up, I'm just going to directly set up this open triangle twist. And then here at the bottom, I will match this swivel and squash for the partial closed square twist. All right, so then on the top edge, I can put another open triangle twist. Again, my valley is going to come straight to the corner of the closed triangle because it's mirroring that close connection on the other side of the mirror line. And I want to set my third mountain relative to the outlined triangle. Squashing that in place. we've got some more open triangle twists. So next up, I could decide that actually I do want these partial closed triangles up top, in which case I can fold down this one spacing flap and put in a partial and a partial. These are swivels around these outer points. And one interesting thing about these partial twists is that they match up with the partial twists at the bottom. So if I had multiple copies of this particular tessellation that we're folding on this particular grid, the 24 folding triangle grid on a square, I could take this and add another one on top, and they would exactly pair up. So interesting information if you want to make a patchwork to make a larger piece. So the next question is, okay, how are we continuing this? Well, I like to think of it as still continuing to use mirror symmetry. You could also think of it as taking this whole column and making a copy over in the next location. Both of those will get you the same result. And I just like talking about symmetry, so I like to see the mirrors whenever they are present. So then, continuing on, I'll start from the top of the stairs, and since the point of my open twist comes exactly to the mirror symmetry line, that tells me that my valley for the next twist also needs to come and meet that point. Then I'll get my mountain fold, my target triangle, and using that target triangle, I can place my third mountain fold. And so, squashing this in place, I'm then going to have a closed triangle close by and another open triangle down here. In this case, my new valley fold is going to run from tip of open triangle to tip of open triangle. So you see I've got my pleat intersection here. It's really close to the edge of the paper, so it's easy to open up. And I'm going to do like we did on the previous column and make two closed three-way intersections that I then flatten down and then open out first the closed one and then shift the mountain over and put the valley on the far side for the open twist. Sound familiar? And so this is going to repeat twice more as I complete the column. So I'm getting my two three-way intersections. The top one becomes a closed twist, and the bottom becomes an open twist. And repeating once more. I'm gonna get, and this time I'll just put them in as closed and open. So instead of having the closed three-way intersection at the bottom, I just decided to leave it as an open intersection. And in this situation, I would squash the open twist first because it's causing 3D-ness, it's causing puffiness, whereas the closed twist can just stay in its flat state. And then open out that closed twist right there. So you can see this is headed towards another repeat, but we don't actually have enough paper to make a full twist on the other side of the repeat. So I'm going to hop over to the opposite side. Just while we're here, I'll finish it up with those two swivels to create the partial triangle twists. So then, same thing on the other side of the paper. I'm going to start at the top of the stairs. I need to create an open triangle twist. And one interesting piece of advice here is that you don't have to keep your paper in the same orientation the whole time. If it's easier for you to fold your twists with the pleats this way, or this way, or this way, then I encourage you to do that. I'm mostly folding with everything in the same orientation, so it's easier to follow the video. So then, like we saw on the last column, we're going to have our valley fold go from point to point of these open triangles. Our top twist here will be a closed triangle. The bottom twist will be open. So I'm going to go ahead and do this the quick way, because I've already showed y'all the easy way. The quick way is to just set everything up as you want it to be in the end, and then squash your twists as desired. This is getting really interesting because I thought I had centered my tessellation. Apparently not. But that's one of the great things about practice pieces. You can do whatever you need to do, and it's still a practice piece. So today we are practicing right and left-handed open and closed triangle twists. So we're not going to worry about whether the tessellation is exactly centered or not. And once more with this column, and we've got another column complete. On this side, there is enough space to do a little bit more. It looks like the difference between the two is a shift of one spacing. So I must have either identified the wrong center or done something else a little bit funky. But here we are. We've got another mirror symmetry line coming down right next to these closed triangles. And as you might suspect, this mirror symmetry line can be placed either right next to the triangle or further away. And I'll go ahead and draw the symmetry line on the other side as well. And so, as before, so again, I'm going to go one spacing out from the corner of the closed triangle twist to set up the next closed triangle and squash that triangle into place. In this column, we do have an option of folding a partial open triangle twist. If you're not comfortable with this, don't worry about it. But we do have the option. Or, if we really wanted to, we could change the pattern and get the vast majority of a full closed triangle twist, if we really wanted to. So we'll have a couple more of these, and I'll explain more in depth with those. And just getting those partial closed triangles up at the top. Again, if you're just starting out with tessellations, don't worry about the partial twists on the edges. It's really not that big of a deal. So here, my pleat overlap, if I had one, would be off the edge of the paper. So what I can do is just set up the closed triangle twist just like I did with this one down here. Go ahead and squash it, and you'll see that this bit up above wants to be a three-way intersection. But we want it to be an open triangle twist, so we'll move this mountain fold down one grid spacing so the target triangle is outlined. And then I'll start squashing by pushing at this grid intersection at the corner of the target triangle, and then that same corner on the pleat above. And with those two corners pressed flat, I can squash this complete edge as opposed to these two partial edges, and then the two partial edges will fall into place. So once more on that, I've got my closed triangle twist down here at the bottom of the pear, and then I'm going to shift this mountain fold down one grid spacing, push the grid intersection at the corner of the inner triangle, and then a second corner of that triangle. These are the innermost corners of the triangle. Squash the complete edge first, and then the incomplete edges. So then I can do the same down below here, where I'm going to have yet another partial open triangle. And then I can do a swivel on this partial closed bit down at the bottom. And there we have a completed tessellation. Now, if I wanted to take care of these partial twists on the edge, I could do that. I would simply need to do partial closed twists, which are easier than partial open twists. And it's really going to be all about the swivel and squash. So the valley fold is coming into the corner, right to the mirror line, and then the paper is squashing down so that this mountain fold, the original pleat, comes down right in line with the valley fold that's extending up and to the right. Again, these finishing touches are not necessary. I just find them attractive since it's acknowledging that the tessellation has infinite extent, whether we actually fold, well, whether our paper does or not. Hint, paper does not have infinite extent. So here we have a lovely practice piece, and if yours is better centered than mine, well done. And unless there are questions, that's going to be all for this week. Next week we'll be covering closed and open hexagon twists and having fun with those. So I invite you to tune in next week as well and continue learning to fold origami tessellations. So have a great rest of your week and happy folding!